Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's an honor to be here in front of you in the Labor Committee. The advantages of putting the minimum wage to the CPI, as you know, I've ran the minimum wage for quite a few years. And it's time now that we give it to the CPI. It prevents the real value of the minimum wage from eroding due to inflation, ensuring it keeps pace with the cost of living. Worker stability helps low-wage workers afford necessities, housing, food, etc., and reduces reliance on social programs. The economic stimulus puts more money in the hands of low-income earners who are likely to spend it boosting consumer demand in the economy. In my opinion, everybody should be making a living wage. This is we're one of the richest countries in the world, and we still have people hungry, and that's not right to me. This is my own opinion. We need, every time you boost minimum wage, it boosts everybody. It helps the economy. It helps stimulus for spending, and they're not going to go to Stowe for the weekend skiing. They're going to go to Scarborough maybe and have a couple hot dogs, and parking is going to get them there. So that's about it on the minimum wage.
Chairman, I do have one other bill that I'll be very brief on. I just wanted to testify in support of Chairman Bennett's bill H7770, legislation that establishes a predictable schedule of minimum wage increases and ties future adjustments to inflation. I just briefly want to share an experience of one of my members, a school custodian, and he shared to me a thoughtful anecdote that I think really encapsulates the importance of this bill and the need for it. He had previously worked in a private sector job that was non-unionized, and one of the appeals that came to him in joining a public school system was not just only to prepare classrooms and lunchrooms for students so that they can successfully learn in these spaces, but it was also tied to the economic stability that comes with a public sector unionized position, in the fact that he's able to make financial decisions in perpetuity, knowing what he has to budget for in upcoming years. This bill does this for both the General Assembly, employers, and employees. By adjusting the minimum wage to the rate of inflation, it allows employers and employees to be able to plan ahead, to know what essentially they have the ability to do in the coming year. And I think that's really something that's very important. He told me that it's not just about receiving a raise, it's about stability. And the ability to look ahead and have that type of predictability is something that, he will never take for granted in this position, because he knows what it's like to not have that. So this bill provides transparency as well as predictability for employers and employees. The other thing is that, before this committee, there have been many conversations around a rise in the minimum wage. And one of the things that we hear from, the business sectors, we've heard this increase is too much, $1 an hour. And if you're going from, say, $14 an hour to $15 an hour, that's an increase of 7-8%. Now, there are years, year on year, where an increase based on the rise in inflation will be below that. So this is a way that is meaningful for individuals, is based on some parity and fairness, and it also allows employers to be able to plan this out as they're monitoring the financials, and we as the concerned public are looking at what is taking place in terms of consumer inflation and the cost of living. So I just want to close with this, that fair wages matter, and predictable wages increase and build stability, dignity, and the ability for working families to plan for their future in Rhode Island. So thank you for your consideration on this, and I respectfully urge you to support this bill.
So indexing the minimum wage to inflation using the Consumer Price Index following minimum wages increase already codified into statute, which brings workers to $17 an hour in 2027. So this would index minimum wage to CPI starting in The bill says 2029. We have had a conversation with both Chairman and Chairman Bennett about making a change to this language. It was our intention for it to be indexed in 2028, as well as to make sure that this change is done in perpetuity. I don't think that's clear in this specific language, but we wanted to make sure that was on the record, that we wanted to make sure that every year following that the bill would be indexed to CPI. So we're in strong support of this legislation. For far too long, wages have not increased with the cost of living. We see this bill as a win-win-win. It's a win for workers. We need to be able to move their wages up in order to meet the increasing cost of living. It's good for local businesses. We know that as minimum wage workers, as their wages increase, they're not spending that money on luxurious vacations, and if they are, that would be great, but they're using it in their local businesses. They're using it to provide food for their families in the grocery stores, and to maybe be able to go to the local pizza shop in their town. Additionally, it's good for businesses, because what it does is it indexes the minimum wage, so it sets a predictable path forward, a predictable increase that they can plan for and budget for each year. And for those reasons, we're in strong support of this legislation.
On the minimum wage bills, if you will, I've heard a few people say like they're not spending this, like their money on luxurious vacations, things like that. I am of the mind that why not? Spend your money on luxurious vacation. I get it. I get it. Life is really tough and things, but in the last year, I have learned to appreciate time to rest and how powerful that can be with or without money. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you right now, if I was really irresponsible, I would be on a beach somewhere, because I am struggling with this cold. But, however, I think that we should be able to have a minimum wage that allows us to pay our bills, live where we want to live, eat the things that we want to eat, and explore, whatever that means, whether it's in your own state or a luxurious vacation. So I don't want to put those two things in a negative sentence, right? Like, we should be paying people enough money, or all the money that they need or deserve, whatever, just to live happy, healthy lives, whatever that is. And we should not be shaming people for taking time off and exploring the world, or doing a little bit more than the next person, or whatever it is. So I'm obviously in super support of this, but I just want people to live their lives with a luxurious vacation.
I agree.
And then we have the other side of the coin, rest. What is rest?
Can I introduce my other bill, Chairman?
Yes, your next bill is 7771.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah. So I wanted to introduce House Bill 7771, which is increasing the minimum wage law to $24 an hour. We also have a Senate sponsor as well, Senator Mack on the Senate side. Look, right now with some people might question, right, that's pushing the limits. I know we're working on raising the minimum wage the last few years from 15 to 16 to 17. I know we still have a way to go. I know I have experience, working with employers, families, running small businesses, this and that. I know the argument, how are you going to pay for how you're going to pay your workers? You're going to run employers and businesses, small businesses, out of business. You're going to it's going to just drive businesses to close or file bankruptcy. This bill is with a sole emphasis focus on the major employers, the big corporations. Right now, with high inflation, people are struggling to pay their bills, their rents, their electricity bills, taxes, high cost of food, high cost of living in general it's just gotten out of control for all Rhode Islanders. And so the least that we can do is to try to raise the minimum wage bill, so that this bill focuses on specifically people who are working in the bigger employers, right? The Amazons, the UPSs, the big companies that are still paying their workers below minimum wage wages. So this bill, it reinforces that a single mom, the senior citizens who are struggling to pay their bills, and this bill is to bring more support for Rhode Islanders. If we can't control the rents, if we can't control mortgages, if we can't control the utilities, the least that we can do is raise wages for working Rhode Islanders so that they can afford to pay their bills. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Sanchez. Any questions? Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Leader Breen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You, Representative, said that this is geared mostly towards the large employers, correct?
Correct, Leader.
But that's not what this bill does. This bill is an across-the-board minimum wage increase to $24, which is an $8 jump in a 12-month period. I mean, I know you come from a family of small business. I've got small businesses in my district, people I'm friends with. I've got someone who operates a party supply store in Woonsocket who has 3 employees. And she called me about this particular bill and said, I would never be able to keep my employees with this. There's no way I can pay $24 an hour. In fact, right now, in the United States, Washington State has the highest minimum wage in the country. And they will go eventually to somewhere a little bit less than $18 an hour in 2027. I guess the question is, how do you almost seem to fluff it off that I know this is not good for small business, but how can you justify an $8 an hour increase in the minimum wage for small employers? How could they possibly make that happen, in your estimation?
Yeah, so like I said, there's clear exemptions and details that we're working around the bill. I would love for this bill to pass, but I know that right now, how the language stands, we need to make some changes to exempt certain most small businesses from the bill. I am with the mentality, the ideology, right, that if you're running a business and you're not paying your workers low wages, you shouldn't be running a business. You know, I personally would not want to make that mistake. And I've you know, the businesses that I'm involved with, my family or other partners, I'm careful to see how we, you know, we make payments, right, to our workers. We don't have time. We're living at a crossroads right now, Leader Breen, where people in general, regardless of their economic status, are struggling. Whether you're wealthy or middle class, whatever the case is, or you're running a business or a big company, we need to understand that not everyone has the same privileges. Not all workers have the same privileges that a lot of other people do. And I will give it to you. You're right. There are details and exemptions that need to be looked at in this bill. I need to go over and I need to make some adjustments to it before we can pass this bill. But I do want to see us pass something like this. Maybe not $24 right now, maybe $21, $22 down the road.
And I understand. I think that for me, you know, what bills like this do, I mean, you know, I'm no fan of Jeff Bezos, but I don't begrudge the guy. He started Amazon, not me, so he can make $1 trillion, not me. I wish I would have done that. But the average base hourly pay at Amazon is $23 an hour right now. It usually starts around 19, but the average is like 23. So what concerns me, I guess, in this is that it's the message that this General Assembly sends with stuff like this to the small business community in the state of Rhode Island, that they're constantly under attack. And we do this, whether it's death by 1,000 cuts to the hospitality industry or whether we do it with this kind of stuff. We almost come from a position that if you own a business, you are somehow shortchanging your employees. And I just don't think we can paint with such a broad brush. I just wanted to put on record, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate your latitude that you've given me, that I respect that. I know where you're coming from, Rep, and I think, you know, it's laudable where you're coming from with your heart and your intention. I think the road to hell is paved with good intention at times.
Yep.
And this is nothing that I could ever support. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions? Thank you, Rep.
Thank you.
And lastly, I signed on to most of the minimum wage bills, not all for a couple of reasons. But my only comment is, I hope, while I still walk this earth, the term working poor is eliminated from our vocabulary. And not by erasing it, by fixing it. And that's what we need to do. And minimum wage, I mean, try to live on $20 an hour, man. I mean, even that, if we could get to that, people are starving, and we got to figure that out. And the whole country's screwed up. We all get that. But raising that minimum wage is critical, critical, critical. And it doesn't impact my members at all. We have a collective bargaining agreement. We say this and do this because it's the right thing to do. And that's the end of my testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, Jason Martesian representing the Rhode Island Business Coalition. We're testifying in opposition to the three, I believe, minimum wage bills that are scheduled for a hearing this afternoon, 7769, 7770, and 7771, all propose increasing the minimum wage to a certain level by a certain date and time. As this committee is very well familiar, the legislature just last year increased the minimum wage. It took effect January 1 of this year to $16 an hour, and then already scheduled to go up to $17 an hour January 1, 2027. We submitted written testimony, so I will try not to be redundant. We've said a number of times in this committee, earlier this year in past sessions, just want to remind this committee that Rhode Island is a truly small business state. 92% of the businesses are with 20 or fewer employees. They are dealing with increased utility cost, increased insurance cost, increased taxes, and obviously increased wages. They are paying employees because they have to retain employees because it's difficult in a difficult job market to find people to work. It's one thing to talk about some of your larger employers who may be able to adjust some of the increases or absorb some of the increases because they can push those costs down on their suppliers in one form or another. Small businesses just truly cannot do that for one reason or another. In addition, not just when the minimum wage increases, the wage increases, but your taxes that are commensurate with that increase as well, your FICA taxes and so on and so forth. So we would just ask that the committee consider, again, Rhode Island being a small business state, this increase would make us, I think we are the sixth highest in the country right now, if I remember correct, tied with, I believe, the state of Ohio. So we are not lagging in a minimum wage by any measure. We would ask this committee to not take any action on any of these bills for the reasons we've stated. And again, we submitted written testimony for the record. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Thank you. You have
Thank you, Mr.
two other
Chairman.
bills you wanted to speak on?
I'm sorry?
Did you want to speak on two other bills?
Did I sign up for two other bills?
Well, you said you were against.
Just the three minimum wage bills, I think,
Okay.
was, yes, I think
All
that
right.
was all we signed. We
Well,
submitted.
that
written
was very
testimony for
concise.
those.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Billy?
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Bill Walsh here on behalf of a couple of different organizations, predominantly are going to speak from the Northern Rhode Island Chamber of Commerce, who submitted written testimony on many of these matters, along with some local trade associations, including the Builders Association, Hospitality Association, Marine Trades, and the construction industries of Rhode Island, who have also signed on some of the business coalition letters that Jason just spoke about. Regarding the minimum wage bills, we're really asking and pleading for a pause and a rebalancing opportunity. To further drive up these costs at a time when everything else is exacerbated at outrageous proportions, as Jason noted, really puts us in a vulnerable position on the small business side in particular. And we are quite an outlier already at the high end of this scale and heading higher in January as well. So we're asking for a pause. This also impacts unemployment insurance, workers' comp, on top of wages and FICA, and as well as it also drives Sunday holiday pay. And as noted on some of these bills, we are the lone standard bearer carrying Sunday holiday pay at all. And this is something that when Massachusetts made their decision to get to the $15 minimum wage, they took a multi-pronged phasing out of Sunday holiday as part of that. And that was an accommodation to the business community recognizing the impact that was being had by significantly shifting up. Now, we've already surpassed the 15, we're at 16 and heading to 17, and now we have bills trying to go 50% higher on top of that. We are really pleading that Sunday holiday is a particular piece of the conversation that needs to be had to phase this out because it is further hurting businesses. It is also reducing opportunities for work because some businesses may consider how many people, how many shifts, and whether or not to even open on Sundays. It has that impact as well. And so we offer that truly needs to be part of this conversation. We do have a bill this evening that the hospitality is asking for a component of their industry, the caterers, to be treated along with their peers in the hospitality world. Restaurants and hotels currently have this treatment, but based on definitions and interpretations, caterers have not been afforded the same exemption within the industry, and they are required to pay time and a half on Sundays and holidays. We think that is an unfair treatment within an industry, and it hurts their abilities to compete as well. So we are supportive of 7973 for those reasons as well. And to try and wrap up a couple of these quick, regarding 7959 on the pay stubs bill, we certainly recognize that it's well-intentioned, but we would note that there are some vague and subjective terminologies that arise here. And so trying to provide for what is understandable, what does that mean? Is that providing it in varying languages that you know or don't know and dialects of a person's ability to understand, and or do they understand it in the format that's being provided, and how those treatments would be brought back against employers are all questions we have about implementation of such standards. And so we raise our concerns to that bill. And then lastly, with 7490 regarding salaried employees being paid overtime and taking away the exemptions for certain executive, administrative, and professional employees. Our greatest concern here is it shifts the employment relationship from a focus on results and outcomes that affords greater autonomy to get those things done to a tracking of outputs and micromanagement. And I'm not sure that employees would like to see things rolled back in that way as well. So for all these reasons, we express concerns on all these bills, and thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening.
Thank you, Bill. Any questions of the witness? Seeing none, Bob Goldberg.
Afternoon for the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce, and comments are directed primarily to the minimum wage bills. They have submitted written testimony in regard to these. I'll try not to be redundant, but for the life of me, I can't understand how any of these bills do anything to attract business to Rhode Island. Actually, these bills, as I read it, do just the opposite. Why? You wonder why nobody's coming. Read these bills. Now, they don't have to become law to scare businesses away. Just by the fact that these things are put in is a detriment to trying to bring business into Rhode Island. If we had more business in Rhode Island, that would be more jobs for more people. And these bills are very short-term oriented, and I think they're harmful to the state and the competitive platform of the country. For those reasons, Greater Providence Chamber objects to these bills and urges you not to pass them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Wrote all my testimony, but going to keep it brief. I agree with many of the points that the gentleman before me made. Particular issue with House Bill 7770, which ties us to the CPIU in the Northeast. Tying Rhode Island's wages to an index that includes New York City and Boston, where workers benefit from extensive public transportation, abundant services, infrastructure that reduces daily expenses. These are advantages that Rhode Islanders simply don't have, and automatic increases based on that index overstate our real cost of living and put Rhode Island businesses under unnecessary pressure. Speaking from the hospitality standpoint, 42% of restaurants last year were not profitable. Our profit generally sits between 3 and 5%. Last year, it was much closer to that 3% range. So any addition to the minimum wage will result in price increases, which then increases the cost of your food, which increases inflation, which, if tied to CPI, then increases wages again. And we just end up in this cycle where food becomes more expensive people who are making the minimum wage can afford less with that minimum wage, regardless of whether it's $16 an hour, $17 an hour, whatever it may be. And it continues to increase costs, and our purchasing power just decreases. So for those reasons, the Rhode Island Hospitality Association is opposed to 7770 and the other minimum wage bills.
Thank you, Mr. Moot. Any questions? Thank you. Mr. Krinsky?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Alan Krinsky. I'm Director of Research and Fiscal Policy at the Economic Progress Institute. And with your permission, I will testify first about Rep. Bennett's bill, and alongside those at the same time, Rep. Sanchez's 7771 and Rep. Furtado's 7769. And after I'm done with that, I'll testify about Rep. Potter's 7490. So for these group of minimum wage bills, including Rep. Bennett's, it can't be, or at least it shouldn't be, the case that we can have a successful, vibrant economy only if we pay workers wages that are not enough for these workers to meet their most basic needs. Every 2 years, our organization produces this report, the Rhode Island Standard of Need, in even-numbered years. We'll have a new edition coming out later this year, where we look at what is a basic needs budget for individuals, families of different sizes. And so in this 2024 edition, we determined that it costs a single adult worker working in full-time without any children $23.47 an hour to meet basic needs, not to take vacations, but basic needs. For two adults working full-time with two children, each needed about $25.75 an hour. And I won't even go into a single parent with two children. So what I'm saying is that Rep. Sanchez's proposal would at least get folks to the equivalent, what was a basic needs budget in 2024. So not even a true living wage in 2027, but it'll be much closer than what we're at now. And short of this, Rep. Furtado's $20 per hour proposal would be a welcome step in that direction. And then to Rep. Bennett's bill, and certainly we should add an annual inflation adjustment. Connecticut already has this. When Connecticut moved to $16 per hour, they had that in place. It then went up to $16.35 last year and to $16.94 this year. And so as he's proposed, and I think for whatever proposal one would accept for raising minimum wage, we should have an inflation adjustment added to that, preferably to get it higher first, but then add that to whatever the base amount is. Increasing the minimum wage will increase equity. It'll increase the amount of money circulating in the economy. But most of all, we need to get Rhode Island to a place where hardworking Rhode Islanders can earn at least a basic needs wage and eventually a living wage for working full-time at their jobs. So that's on the minimum wage bills. I don't know if you want me to pause.
Any questions? I have one.
Okay.
What does the Economic Progress Institute consider to be the minimum wage? What should the minimum wage right now be in the state of Rhode Island?
I don't know that we've particularly calculated that. When we come out with the 2026 edition of this report in probably September, we'll have a sense of what a basic needs wage is, and maybe what a living wage is, which would be something that would allow people to save a little bit of money and have some money to give gifts and things like that. That's beyond the basic needs. So I could just say that 2 years ago, it was already, for an individual without kids, it was a little under $24, a basic needs wage. There are various calculators online. MIT has one. Our national partner, the Economic Policy Institute, has a calculator for these sorts of things.
Thank you.
I'm speaking on behalf of both bills, 7769, I believe, and 7771 on behalf of labor. I don't know how many of you guys actually signed the front of a check, but I do. And many of the businesses that I support or that I work with also believe in what I'm about to say. You guys are trying to push a minimum wage so we can have a livable wage. Well, what is livable wage? What's it for you? What's it for you? It's different for everybody. I can tell you when my daughter started work for me a year and a half ago, at 15 years old, she wasn't worth $15 an hour. She had no experiences. She never worked before, but you guys forced me to pay her $15 an hour. So the worker that's been with me longer, 8, 9, 10, or 20 years, and you smile, it's not funny. Thank you. Can you guys hear me now? Thank you. We can't afford to pay more money when we're encouraged to pay or forced to pay an individual that's starting out as an entry-level job, a wage that's unacceptably high. There has to be an entry-level wage. But with what you guys are thinking, why stop at 20 or 24? Based on the way the state's running, energy cost, electrical, heating, taxes, you might as well be $50 or $60 an hour, because 20 and 24 ain't enough for anybody to have a livable wage. You got to think about the businesses. Like they told a couple minutes ago with restaurants with 3, 4, 5, 6, 8% bottom line. That's all you got. We struggled to survive. You guys are driving up costs. Go open up your business and just say, hey, we're going to pay the most we can, $50, $60, $70 an hour to an employee in an industry like ours. You won't survive. You won't be around. It's important that you guys think that you shouldn't be forcefully pushing us to increase the minimum wage. I don't believe with anything you guys are saying, but I will tell you, if you come work at Brood Awakenings, you don't make $16 an hour. You don't make 17. You don't make 18. You don't make 19. You don't make 20. The lowest paid worker in our company is $21 an hour. And it's not because you guys dictate it. It's because of the way we run the company. It's because of the people that work for us. That's at bare minimum. People that are there longer, we try to get more money to them. But when you force me to pay my daughter, who's an entry-level worker, and now you want $20 an hour? Well, guess who's not going to have that long-time job? It's going to be the worker that's been there 10, 15, or 20 years, because you won't be able to afford them. It's not the way to run business. Businesses in Rhode Island are good. They take care of their employees. And you guys should understand that, and you should let them do their job and not get involved in any wage compensation. If somebody's abusing their employees, absolutely. But to stand there and think you can dictate a livable wage, you have no idea how somebody lives. You don't know what they need. You can never meet that objective. So I disagree with all these bills, and I think you guys need to stay out of business and let us do our job. Thank you.
Any questions of the witness? Representative Potter.
Thank you, Chairman. Sir, are you aware that when the minimum wage was enacted, it was meant to be a livable wage?
No, I'm not aware it's meant to be a livable wage.
All right, well, I would encourage you to go back and review that basic part of American history, because that might better inform you. Secondly, let me ask you this. You said that you're struggling to survive. You're the owner of Brood Awakenings, right?
That's correct, sir.
You've got a facility in Johnston?
I do.
2 in Johnston or just 1?
There's one now.
You got 1 in Cranston?
I do.
1 down in Wakefield?
I do not.
Okay.
Maybe you should do your history look.
Okay, why don't you just tell me then, make it easy for the committee. How many facilities do you own, and where are they all?
Cranston, Warwick, Johnston.
You building another one in Cranston?
I might be, but at the cost that we have right now to build it, it's impossible. We had a budget of $2.3 million to build it. We bought the property for $1.1 million. Trying to build it now, we're over 4 before even putting a shovel in the ground.
And it's your testimony that some of the struggle that you're having is because of the minimum wage type laws that we enact here in the General Assembly, right? Puts a constraint on your business, is that a fair?
It absolutely does. When you tell me I got to pay a worker a certain wage, and I use my own daughter as the example. Let me ask you, my daughter 15, do you think she's worth $16, $17 an hour, first-time job?
Gentlemen, before this escalates, let me step in as chairman and say, let's not have a back and forth.
Okay.
I think Mr. LeVake has made a good point. I think Representative Potter has made his point. Unless you go into other grounds or other areas, let's see if we can wrap this up.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I just have really one more question.
Sure.
Because going back to what you were saying about something you just mentioned, you might not complete that construction, and the struggle that you're facing is because of, again, business regulation and minimum wage laws that we've enacted here, right? But didn't you just testify a moment ago that you pay well above the minimum wage? So how can your testimony be both that you pay well above the minimum wage, but that you're also so pressured by minimum wage laws that even your own daughter isn't worth that amount of money?
I'll go back to the example. Somebody who doesn't have the skills that's an entry level, you can't be dictating to businesses in Rhode Island that they should be paying a livable wage for that person. We send people to school to learn so they can get out into the workforce and earn a job based on that skill. Not everybody should be paid the same amount of money. It's based on skill. So if you're working for me and you've been there for a long time, you might be worth 25 or 30. But when you force me to pay my daughter 16 to 17, I can't give you the 25 to 30. You should not be in the business of telling businesses what they should pay. You have no idea how to run a business. You don't employ people.
I don't have any further questions
I
for the
think,
witness,
that'll-
Chairman.
I
would
think
just
that'll-
respectfully say that actually is what we do, right? As a governing body in a state legislature, we do pass laws that in part regulate business. That's a core function of what we do.
It is within the purview of the General Assembly to enact laws. How we decide to enact those laws is a dynamic between the public and their elected officials.
Understood.
Thank you. Jocelyn Antonio.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Corvisi and members of the House Labor Committee. My name is Jocelyn Antonio, and I'm a resident of Cumberland. I am providing this testimony in my personal capacity as a public health professional. I strongly urge your favorable consideration and support for H. 7769, sponsored by Representative Furtado, and H. 7771, sponsored by Representative Sanchez. H. 7769 proposes to increase the state's minimum wage from $16 to $20 by January 1st, 2027, while H. 7771 would increase the minimum wage to $24 by January 1st, 2027. These two pieces of legislation represent a critical step towards enhancing the well-being of Rhode Island's residents. I want to start by saying that raising the minimum wage is a matter of health equity. If you look at what low-wage workers in Rhode Island look like right now, they are disproportionately adults, women, individuals from Black and Latino communities. Many already work full-time and still live within 200% of the poverty line. This bill could help address this inequity. While the minimum wage is often perceived as a purely economic issue, wages are one of the most significant predictors of health outcomes. Income shapes access to basic needs such as stable housing, nutritious foods, and timely medical care, which are a fundamental building block of health. Peer-reviewed research demonstrates that higher minimum wages correlate with improved health metrics across the lifespan. Economic stability is a fundamental social determinant of health and is directly tied to health outcomes. When individuals earn a living wage, this enables them to have access to nutritious food, secure housing, good schools, access to health care. And individuals with higher incomes are more likely to have access to healthcare services. From a public health perspective, policies that increase income are upstream interventions as it prevents illness before it occurs rather than treating it after the fact. I urge your support for either of these bills. Our state needs it. Our Rhode Islanders should be able to work and also earn a livable wage, regardless of whether they are skilled or not and can be taught or not, because a lot of these skills can be taught to people and they contribute to the small businesses and large businesses in our state. And they should also share some of the profits that people make. So thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Any questions of the witness? Jocelyn, I assume you were discussing both 7771 and 7769, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we have Mr. DeJesus.
Yes.
I know you're on a couple of bills. If you'd like to take the time now to speak.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll start with 7771 by Representative Sanchez.
Okay, so I'll just move forward.
Can you put your mic on? I don't think your mic's on. Closer. Then you got to bring the mic closer.
Hello? Hello?
That's
Is that
better.
fine? Okay. So at Progreso Latino, we work every day with individuals and families who are doing everything we ask for them. They are working full-time, often across multiple jobs, contributing to our economy and caring for their families. Yet, despite their efforts, many remain unable to meet their most basic needs. Increasingly, we are seeing families forced to make impossible decisions between paying rent or buying groceries, between seeking medical care or covering transportation costs. These are not isolated cases, but a consistent and growing reality across the communities we serve. This reality is reflected in the experiences of one of our ESL students. She works 2 jobs, one during the day and one late into the evening, and still makes time to attend English classes at night because she is committed to building a better future for herself and her family. She's doing everything right, working, learning, and investing in her own growth. And yet, even with that level of effort, she continues to struggle to make ends meet. Her story is not unique. It is representative of many in our community. The gap between wages and the cost of living in Rhode Island is no longer sustainable. Data from the MIT Living Wage Calculator demonstrates that the income required to meet basic living expenses in our state far exceeds the current minimum wage. What this means in practice is that full-time work is no longer a reliable and pathway to stability. Instead, it has become a condition of ongoing financial insecurity for too many Rhode Islanders. For immigrant and multilingual families, these challenges are even more pronounced. Many of these individuals we serve are employed in essential sectors such as hospitality, cleaning services, food service, and caregiving roles that are critical to the functioning of our state, yet consistently undervalued and underpaid. These workers played indispensable roles during the pandemic and continue to sustain our local economy, but they remain disproportionately impacted by low wages and rising costs. Raising the minimum wage to $20 or $24 per hour represents a necessary and overdue step towards aligning wages with the realities of living in Rhode Island. This policy is not only an economic intervention, but also one that has implementations for housing stability, public health, and long-term economic mobility. When wages increase, families are better positioned to remain housed, access health care, and invest in their futures. At its core, this is a question of whether full-time work in Rhode Island will once again provide a pathway to dignity and stability. The individuals and families we serve, we are already demonstrating resilience, commitment, and a willingness to work. What they need is a wage structure that reflects the value of their contributions and the cost of the communities they call home. We respectfully urge this committee to take bold and necessary action by supporting House Bill 7771 and 7769. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Any questions of the witness? Welcome to House Labor.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Michael Beauregard. I'm here today on behalf of Affordable Rhode Island. Just to credential myself a little bit more, also, I do run a small business called Can you hear me now? Is that better?
The green light on?
Yes, it was. How about that? Great. Okay. So I also run a small business, Reach Consulting. We've been around for over a decade. We've had year-over-year revenue growth, and so I do know a little bit about writing on the front side of the check and paying people a living wage. So really the goal of this bill is simple. It's to immediately, starting in 2027, move the minimum wage to $20 an hour. And I think in considering some of the arguments that have been posited today, a way to think about this in response to something the gentleman from the Hospitality Association said around the endless cycle of inflation and wages is that we need a reset right now for working people. The minimum wage is not a living wage, and people are really struggling. We know there's an affordability crisis. So really, this is one of the best ways to address it, by giving people more money to spend. So let's just get into the reality right now. So the math of survival is tough. Right now, if you're on $16 an hour, that's about 2/3. We've established it's about 2/3 of what a single adult with no children needs to actually live in Rhode Island, because they had 24 or under 24 a couple years ago. MIT says 25 an hour. So it's not meeting the needs like rent, food, medicine. What does that mean for people who earn a minimum wage or around there? It just means that they're working more than 40 hours a week. On average, if you're working at $16 an hour, you need to work 62 and a half hours a week just to make a living wage in the state. So it's not a side hustle anymore for folks. That's like a recipe for exhaustion and burnout. So there's a punishment for work as well for parents who make the minimum wage. That same MIT calculator showed that a single parent with one child needs to earn $45 an hour to be able to sustain themselves and their family in the state. So if you're a parent who's working a minimum wage job, your punishment for working in that probably an essential job is that you will not get to see your child most nights. There's developmental stakes as well for these children whose parents are working, every hour that they're awake. Data from Kids Count shows that over 51% of renters are cost burdened in their state, meaning they're spending more than 30% of their income on housing. And when parents are forced to work over 60 hours a week, it means that they're frankly not spending time with their children, whether it's reading stories or helping out with homework. And so we are sacrificing the next generation's stability because we are refusing to pay today's workers a fair wage. There's also a moral imperative to this. During the pandemic, we heard a lot about the essential work of our direct care workers and people who work in healthcare. And these are people we trusted to care for our aging parents and children. The irony is that many of these folks who work in direct service jobs actually make around minimum wage or just a little bit more. The average home care worker in the state makes $19 an hour. In fact, 38% of Rhode Island households are now food insecure. So we're often asking people who care for the most vulnerable in our society to not make a living wage themselves. Opponents are going to call this bill or say that $20 an hour is too much too fast. But by 2027, when we get to the stepwise increase we're currently on, $20 an hour will still fall short of a living wage. And the bill is really not an increase so much as an emergency adjustment to get us up to what people actually need to live in our state. And just to your point, Representative Brienne, about what happens in this economy, it's interesting, I hear sometimes a real concern about rising costs when it comes to paying workers more, and often some of the people who are on this opposite side of this argument when it comes to corporate tax breaks or to tax breaks for high earners, we talk about the economic benefits for our economy. I think there's pretty good evidence based on a huge body of research that when you give more money to people who are making the least in our society, that by necessity is going to go into things like groceries, rent, direct investments back into our economy. Agreed that, inflation is going to continue to be a thing, but if we can do a reset where everybody across the board who is most needy at the lowest level of our economic ladder is all of a sudden able to spend more and meet their needs, that's going to be a lot of new economic activity back into Rhode Island's economy, something we should really be talking about a lot more than I think, tax breaks as a way to generate new economic activity. So if we want Rhode Island to be a place where people can afford to live where they work, where parents can see their children every night, and where essential work is treated with the dignity that we say it deserves, then we should pass this $20 an hour minimum wage bill. Thank you for your time.
Any questions of the witness? Representative Fosh.
Thank you very much for your testimony. A minute ago, you said that you've operated a business. You've been the guy writing out the front side of the check. Are you currently running a business?
Yes, I am.
Are you paying anybody $45 an hour besides yourself?
I'm not making $45 an hour, sir.
Okay. So are you paying anybody $45 an hour?
I'm sorry?
Are you paying anyone $45 an hour?
That figure was the figure based on a single parent with two children.
So let's just say that you have 10 employees.
Yep.
You were to pay them $45 an hour. How much would you have to, better yet, let's roll back to the actual four corners of what this bill is asking for. If you pay somebody $20 an hour, which, are you paying anybody 20?
Everybody on my team makes significantly more than $25 an hour currently.
More than $25 an hour?
Yeah, we've had sorry.
So if we were to adjust, according to this bill, an additional $8 an hour, okay, for each of your employees, would you then have to raise your prices?
Not currently, because all of my employees currently make greater than $25 an hour.
Understood, but I'm saying, to offset the impact of this bill, to keep step with it, if you will.
Yep.
You'd probably have to add, say, $8 an hour to what you already pay your employees.
Yeah, I think there's a market impact, but I guess my point is that the market would expand as wages expand. So I don't really work in a business that is immediately impacted. Mine would probably be like a second order effect of this wage increase.
All right, so let me rephrase all of this.
Yep.
So we bring people up to $20 an hour, and they're working in that strata of employment where their entry-level wages that would have otherwise been making 16 or 17. And places like grocery stores, laundromats, places like that, who now have to pay their employees $20 an hour. So in order to keep step with that and make sure that they can pay their taxes and the utility bills and so forth, they need to raise their prices, which offsets any gain that the people who are getting the raise in the first place would otherwise make, perhaps even to the point where it doesn't work out that way, and those people, those small businessmen in the grocery stores and laundromats and liquor stores and convenience stores now have to close their doors.
I understand.
Those people, by the way, are then unemployed, and now they go on unemployment insurance, and now, okay, they're living on less money than they would have been making even at minimum wage.
Yes. Sorry, can I respond to that?
By all means.
So I understand what you're saying about there being a spiral of increased potential costs. I think the question is, what is the leading factor for either wages or for costs? So right now, the driving edge for people on the lowest end of the income spectrum is the rising costs and their wages not keeping pace. So with a bill like a minimum wage increase, what you're saying is, recognizing that inflation continues to ever grow costs, we are going to bump up the lowest wage earners to all of a sudden have a chance to catch up. It's not saying that people who all of a sudden have more money to spend won't drive up costs through inflationary spending, but to say that the people who need more money to spend now to survive will have a little bit more to get through the day, and though the inflationary effect may still occur, we're targeting relief to the people who need it most by targeting the minimum wage. Whereas if you do other things to spur economic development, typically in the form of either tax breaks or tax cuts or tax incentives, those are very much concentrated in believing that a few people are then going to spend those resources and net all these new jobs. I guess my point is, if you target people who are not making a living wage currently with an increase in their ability to spend, those are the same people who frankly frequent Market Basket, are going to then get more food at Market Basket, who are going to go to their local grocer, who are going to go to their local pharmacy and spend that money. So there is, I think, a pretty good body of evidence, I didn't prepare it today, to show that when you raise the minimum wage, the direct economic benefits typically go back into the community in which that's occurring.
So I want to share with you something that I learned on the first day of the first economics course I ever took that the professor told us, and then I'm going to end this statement. Corporations don't pay wages. Consumers pay wages.
Any other questions? I do have one quick one. As I asked the individual, Mr. Krinsky from the Economic Progress Institute, what does Affordable Rhode Island consider a living wage?
I would probably go with the $25 an hour figure, or $25.01 that MIT calculates, just because that's probably a more recent figure for living wage. But I think based on the fact that theirs was calculated about 2 years ago, it probably would leapfrog that and be a little bit more. But $24, $25 an hour would be great from where we are.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, just a statement.
Chairman Casey.
So the average fireman in Rhode Island makes $28.06 an hour. So you're saying that the guy that's flipping burgers should make $20 an hour?
No, sir. I think they should be making more than that.
Thank you. You can come to the next meeting.
Any other questions of the gentleman? Thank you, Mr. Beauregard.
And thank you, members of the House Committee. And again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to come up here and address these issues. If I may, if I could engage with the committee here.
No.
Not at all?
No, you're going to ask questions? No.
I can't ask questions of the committee?
No, you can make demonstratives. You cannot make interrogatories.
Okay, fair enough, easy. All right, so the first thing I'd like to say when we talk about minimum wage, the idea of minimum wage is to create a starting point, and bills like this want to make it a finish line. Okay, nobody ever said that the minimum wage should be considered for someone to run a household or live a certain life, to go on vacations or whatever the case may be. Minimum wage is a starting point. You can make the minimum wage $100 an hour. And do you know what's going to happen? That person that lives the minimum wage lifestyle is going to continue to live the same lifestyle. It doesn't change anything, because the cheeseburger goes from $1 to $3 to $5 to $20. So no matter what you make the minimum wage, minimum input will always give you minimum output. That's one side of this. The other side of this, when you make minimum wage and you take it from whatever dollar amount it is and make it whatever dollar amount you want it to be, as Rep. Casey pointed out, we have firefighters that make $28 an hour. If minimum wage is $16 an hour, they're making $12 more than minimum wage. If you make minimum wage $20 an hour, what do you think that firefighter is going to expect? Rightfully so, a raise. Maybe $12 an hour more than what it was before. So now you're just taking everything and you just keep raising it up, but you actually don't bring somebody out of their problem, which is, I can't afford the lifestyle I want. Does that make sense? Does that register to anybody? Does that make sense? No, make it $100 an hour, minimum wage. That lifestyle is going to be still minimum because everybody else is going to want to go up. I would encourage people to consider, if you want to address wages, I'll give you an example. I own a small business. I've been a small business owner most of my life. I've operated, I've managed other larger companies. There's an underlying issue that nobody seems to address. It is the cost of wages. So for instance, I have a small business. I maybe have 15 employees right now. I have employees that make everywhere from minimum wage up to say 25, 30 bucks an hour. And every week, do you know what I get hit with? A major cost, payroll taxes. If we didn't have such an incredible amount of payroll taxes to pay, people could make more money. So when you look at someone's pay, you guys talk about raising minimum wage. It's not $1 because it's $1 plus the percentage. So in my case, it's about 20%. So if I pay someone $1, it's really $1.20. But they don't get the dollar. They only get maybe 75, 80 cents on that dollar. So at the end of the day, you're not really solving a problem, and all you're doing is fattening the budget for a body like this building to continue to spend $15 billion and we get nowhere. I would encourage this group, if you've never been involved in a business, if you've never worked in a business, I'd invite you to mine. I'll open up all my books. I'll show you all the costs that we incur. I'll show you that I operate a restaurant right now that's been at a loss for 3 years. And the reason why I go in there every day and continue to do it and work the hours that I do and keep sacrificing is because I have employees that depend on it. I do have people that make their living and feed their families off the business, and that's why I get up and go to work every day basically for nothing. And if you think that there aren't business owners doing that every day, I would encourage you. I got tons of them in part of our group. They'll walk you right in. You think there's all these massive profits. You guys obviously don't understand percentages. Anybody that proposes a bill about minimum wage, I'd like to know how many people they pay, how many checks they write, how many payroll taxes they pay, how many electric bills they pay, how many insurance bills they pay, how many vendors and purveyors they pay. Because what you don't understand is a change in the minimum wage never will provide the effect you're looking for. I don't think anyone has the ill intention of negative effect, but negative effect is what happens every time you raise the wage. When you raise the wage, all you do is inflate everything else. It doesn't solve the problem. The people that now can't make it at 16, they're not going to make it at 20, they're not going to make it at 25, they're not going to make it at 100. Because again, like I said when I started this, minimum input will always result in minimum output. If I am a person who is educated, or for instance, I'm not an educated man, right? But I'm in construction, I can build things, so I'm a guy who can come in here and I can build this beautiful woodwork. How much do you think I want to make now when I have to do that if minimum wage goes up? So if my job was, say, worth $50 an hour, well, now I want $150 an hour. And you need someone, because AI can't make that mitered cut. They can't come in here and install it. So guess what? That person can't afford to live in the house because the cost of the house just went up because I got to get more because you just raised minimum wage. The encouragement should be to the public, how do we get you to earn the amount you want to live the life you think you should? So if you want to go on vacation, or if you want to buy a nice car, or if you want to do any other thing that you want to do in life, what does it take to get there? Because I heard people say, 40 hours a week, minimum wage. You show me one person that operates a business that works 40 hours a week, and I will go over and I will give them every dollar I got so they can teach me how to do it. Because I can't tell you a week in my life in the last 25 years that I haven't been 90 to 100 hours, and I'm actually working now for free as part of our group. Because if the League of Rhode Island Business didn't show up and work to change the nonsense that goes on in this house, we do it for free. We do it because it needs to be done, sacrificing the ability to earn money in our businesses and taking time away from our families.
Shane?
Yes, sir.
I think you digress. Let's get back to the bill.
Okay, so back to the bill.
Okay. And
Again,
try to wrap it up a little bit.
point I want to make, Doc, thank you. The point I'm hoping to deliver home is that, and thank you, Rep. Fasha, for pointing certain things out. You made a very good rebuttal to the gentleman that was here before. People want to vilify and demonize businesses and business owners. Who do you think pays all the bills? Who do you think creates all the jobs? Who do you think risks everything to do that? You think $1, $20, do you know the effect and the ripple effect? You will cripple businesses. The percentages, businesses operate on percentages, right? You're paying $16 an hour now minimum wage. If you raise everybody to 20, what's that percentage point? So if you have a business that operates at an 8% profit margin and you just raise their cost by 25%, what did you do? You did two things. Either A, you put them out of business, or B, they got to let everybody go. You will do the exact opposite of what you're intending to do. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Well, wait a minute, don't go away. Any questions of the witness? Representative Potter.
And thank you, Chairman. Just to correct the record, I want to read a quote. It seems to me to be equally plain that no business which depends for existence on paying less than living wages to its workers has any right to continue in this country. By living wages, I mean more than a bare subsistence level. I mean the wages of decent living. We've heard testimony now from two witnesses that have said nobody ever said that a minimum wage should be a living wage. That is a quote directly from President Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1933, 5 years before minimum wage laws were enacted in this country. Thank you.
May I respond?
No.
Thank you.
No. That's the way the rules are. So
Fair enough.
I'd like to think that I'm extremely even keel with everyone who comes before us.